My name is Jessamine Thorpe. I'm 23 years old. I work as a veterinary technician at a small animal clinic in Eugene, Oregon. And 6 months ago, I watched two police officers hand my parents a fraud investigation notice because of a car they had no legal right to sell. My car. The one I bought with my own money. The one they sold while I was 200 miles away, sitting in a lecture hall, completely unaware that the people who raised me had just erased one of the only things I'd ever truly owned. But that satisfying moment with the officers at their door, that wasn't where this story started. Not even close. To understand how we got there, you need to understand what it feels like to grow up in a house where you're always the afterthought. Where your younger brother gets the celebration and you get the chore list. Where your mother smiles at you in public and dismantles you in private. Before I go on, if this story hits close to home, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button and subscribe, only if you genuinely connect with what I'm sharing. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where you're all listening from. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. I grew up in Ridgemont, a mid-sized town in southern Washington. Our house sat on Alder Lane, a quiet street lined with Douglas firs and homes that all looked the same. Beige siding, neat lawns, American flags on the porch. From the outside, we were a normal family. My dad, Glenn Thorpe, managed inventory at a lumber supply company. My mom, Colleen, worked part-time at the front desk of a dental office. And my brother, Tate, 2 years younger than me. He was the son that the whole household orbited around. I don't say that with bitterness. Not anymore. I say it because it's the truth. Tate played baseball. Tate got braces. Tate had birthday parties with custom cakes. I played clarinet in the school band, worked weekends, at a pet supply store starting at 15, and saved every single dollar I made in a fireproof lockbox I kept under my bed. By the time I was 18, I had saved just over $6,000. And in the summer before I left for Oregon State, I used that money to buy a 2009 Honda Civic from an older couple 3 towns over. Silver exterior, cloth seats, 112,000 miles on it. It wasn't flashy, but it ran clean, and it was mine. I titled it in my name, registered it in my name, paid for the insurance myself. I even kept the original bill of sale in a folder with my other important documents, because something inside me, even back then, knew I needed to protect what was mine. I just didn't know I'd need to protect it from my own family. That car got me through senior year. It got me to my college orientation. It got me to my dorm for the first time, packed to the ceiling with everything I owned. And when I couldn't bring it with me to campus because first year, students didn't get parking passes, I left it in my parents' driveway. I told my mom I'd come back for it in the spring when I could apply for a permit. She said, "Sure, Jess, it'll be right here." 7 months later, on a cold Tuesday in February, I called home to ask about driving it down for spring break. My mom didn't answer. My dad didn't answer. Tate didn't answer. I tried 4 times over 2 days. Nothing. On the third day, my mom finally picked up. "Oh, the Civic?" she said, like I was asking about an old jacket. "We sold it. Tate needed help with his truck payment and we figured you weren't using it." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my voice. I just stood in the hallway of my dormitory, phone pressed against my ear, and felt the floor tilt under me. She said, "We figured," like it was a group decision. Like I was part of the conversation. But I was never part of any conversation in that house. I was just the quiet one, the one who worked, the one who never asked for anything. And they took the one thing I had. What I didn't know yet, what I wouldn't discover for months, was that selling that car wasn't just a betrayal. It was a crime, and the trail it left behind would lead somewhere none of them expected. To understand why my parents thought they could sell my car without a second thought, you need to understand the house I grew up in. Not the building, the atmosphere, the invisible rules, the way love was distributed like it was a limited resource, and I was always last in line. My earliest clear memory of feeling like an outsider in my own family is from when I was 7. It was Tate's 5th birthday. My mom had ordered a cake shaped like a baseball diamond, green frosting for the grass, little candy players on the bases. There were streamers in the living room, a bounce house in the backyard, and about 15 kids from Tate's preschool running around in matching party hats. My dad was grilling hot dogs, laughing, tossing a wiffle ball with the other dads. I remember sitting on the back porch steps, eating a hot dog by myself, watching all of it like I was watching someone else's family through a window. My birthday had been 3 months earlier. There was no party. My mom made a boxed cake, yellow with chocolate frosting, and we ate it after dinner. No candles because she forgot to buy them. No friends invited because she said it was too much hassle during the school week. I got a pair of sneakers I needed anyway, and a card that just said, "Happy birthday, Jessamine," in my dad's blocky handwriting. That was it. I didn't throw a fit. I didn't cry. I just accepted it. The way I accepted everything back then. I told myself that maybe next year would be different, but next year was the same, and the year after that, and the year after that. Tate wasn't a bad kid. I want to be clear about that. He didn't ask to be the favorite. He didn't scheme or manipulate. He was just a boy who grew up being handed everything, and so he never learned what it meant to earn something. That's not his fault. Not entirely. But it shaped him. By the time he was 16, he expected things. A new phone every year. Gas money. A lifted truck that my parents co-signed a loan for even though he'd already failed his driving test twice. Meanwhile, I was the one who mowed the lawn. I was the one who did the dishes every night. I was the one who kept my grades high enough to earn a partial scholarship because my parents told me early, almost casually, that they hadn't saved anything for my college. "You're smart, Jess," my mom said once, folding laundry in the living room without looking at me. "You'll figure it out." That sentence lived in my chest like a splinter for years. You'll figure it out. Not, "We'll help you." Not, "Let's look at options together." Just, "You'll figure it out." Like I was already separate from them. Like I was a tenant, not a daughter. My dad was quieter about it. He wasn't cruel in the obvious ways. He just wasn't present. He came home, watched TV, ate dinner, and went to bed. On weekends, he took Tate to baseball games or fishing trips. I can count on one hand the number of times he and I did something together, just the two of us. Once, when I was 12, he drove me to the library because it was raining too hard to bike. He waited in the car, engine running, and didn't come inside. That was our outing. My mom was more complicated. She could be warm in public. She'd put her arm around me at school events and smile at other parents like we were close. But at home, the warmth disappeared. She nitpicked everything. My hair was too messy. My clothes were too plain. I was too quiet at family dinners, or too sensitive when I reacted to being ignored. She had this way of making me feel like I was always doing something slightly wrong, but never telling me what the right thing was. The worst part was the gaslighting. I didn't have a word for it back then, but I felt it. When I'd say something about the difference between how I was treated and how Tate was treated, she'd tilt her head, furrow her brow, and say, "Jessamine, we treat you both equally. I don't know where you get these ideas." And then she'd tell my dad I was starting again, and they'd exchange a look. That tired, annoyed look, like I was a recurring inconvenience. After a while, I stopped bringing it up. I stopped pushing. I just went quiet and built my life around not needing them. That's why the car meant so much. I started working at Pet Barn the summer I turned 15. I stocked shelves, cleaned fish tanks, swept the floors, and ran the register on weekends. Minimum wage. 5-hour shifts. I opened a savings account at the credit union downtown and deposited every paycheck. I didn't buy clothes. I didn't go to concerts. When my friends went out for pizza after football games, I'd say I wasn't hungry. The truth was, I couldn't justify spending $8 on a meal when that $8 could go into the account. By junior year, I had $4,000. By graduation, $6,200. And when I found the Civic listed on Craigslist, one owner, clean title, no accidents, I drove 40 minutes with my friend Brianna's mom to go see it. The couple selling it were in their 70s. They'd bought it new and barely driven it. The interior smelled like lavender air freshener and old upholstery. I paid in a cashier's check. I signed the title. I registered it at the DMV on a Thursday afternoon, standing in line for an hour and a half, holding my documents in a manila folder like they were sacred. Because they were. That car was 3 years of discipline, 3 years of saying no to everything so I could say yes to one thing: freedom. And when I parked it in my parents' driveway for the first time, my mom glanced out the kitchen window and said, hope it doesn't leak oil on the concrete. That was it. No congratulations. No, I'm proud of you. Just a worry about the driveway. I should have known then. I should have seen the pattern clearly enough to predict what came next. But I was 18, and I still had this stubborn, foolish hope that maybe, if I just kept being good enough, they'd finally see me. They didn't. And 7 months into my freshman year at Oregon State, they proved it in the worst possible way. The call happened on a Tuesday, February 11th. I remember the date because I had just walked out of my anatomy and physiology midterm, and I was feeling, for the first time in weeks, actually good. I'd studied for that exam like my life depended on it. I was carrying a coffee from the campus cafe. My backpack was heavy with textbooks, and the air outside was that sharp, wet Oregon cold that bites your ears and makes your eyes water. I called my mom first. No answer. Called my dad. No answer. Called Tate. Straight to voicemail. That wasn't unusual. They weren't exactly a family that kept their phones close when I was the one calling. But I needed to talk about the car. Spring break was 5 weeks away. I wanted to drive it down to campus so I'd have it for the rest of the semester. I had already applied for the parking permit. I'd already budgeted for gas and an oil change. 2 days went by. I texted my mom twice. Nothing. I texted my dad once. Read receipt? No reply. On Thursday evening, I tried my mom again, and this time she picked up on the 4th ring. Hey Mom, I've been trying to reach you. Oh, hi Jess. Sorry, it's been busy around here. Her voice was flat. Not cold, not warm. Just flat. Like she was reading a weather report. I wanted to talk about the Civic. I'm planning to drive it down for spring break. I already got the parking permit approved, so I just need to... Oh. A pause. A long one. The Civic. Yeah, about that. My stomach dropped before she even said the next sentence. Something in her tone. That careful, practiced neutrality told me this wasn't going to be a scheduling conversation. We sold it, Jess. I stopped walking. I was standing on the path between the science building and the east parking lot. A girl on a bike swerved around me. I didn't move. What? Tate was behind on his truck payments. Your dad and I talked about it, and the Civic was just sitting in the driveway not being used. So we sold it to help him out. We got $3,800 for it. $3,800. I paid $6,200. I spent 3 years earning that money, and they sold it, my car, in my name, for $3,800 and gave the money to my brother. Mom, that car is in my name. You can't just sell it. Jessamine, Don't start. We're your parents. We made a decision that was best for the family. Tate was about to lose his truck. His truck that you co-signed. His truck that he can't afford. That's not the point. That is exactly the point. You sold my property to pay for his mistake. It wasn't like you were using it. That sentence. It wasn't like you were using it. Hit me harder than anything she'd ever said. Because it told me everything. It told me that in her mind, my things were temporary. My possessions were communal. My 3 years of sacrifice were less important than Tate's 3 months of poor decisions. I sat down on a bench outside the science building. My coffee was getting cold in my hand. My chest was doing that thing where it feels tight but hollow at the same time, like someone had scooped out everything between my ribs and replaced it with pressure. How did you even sell it? The title is in my name. You needed my signature. Silence. A long one. Mom. How did you sign the title? Your father handled it. How, Mom? She exhaled sharply, annoyed, like I was being unreasonable. He signed it. The buyer didn't ask questions. It's done, Jessamine. There's no point in making this into a bigger deal than it is. My father forged my signature on a legal document to sell a car that didn't belong to him, and my mother was telling me to stop making it a big deal. I didn't yell. I wanted to. Everything inside me was vibrating with a kind of fury I'd never felt before. Not hot, not explosive, but cold, dense, like swallowing a stone. I want the money, I said. All of it. $3,800, transferred to my account by the end of the week. Jess, that money already went to Tate's loan. Then Tate can pay me back. He doesn't have it. He's barely making rent as it is. That's not my problem. You're being selfish. I almost laughed. Almost. The word selfish coming from a woman who had just told me she sold my car, bought with my money, titled in my name, to bail out her son, without even calling me first. I need to go, I said. Jessamine. I hung up. I sat on that bench for 20 minutes. The coffee went cold. My phone buzzed twice, both from her. I didn't open the messages. I just sat there, watching students walk past me, laughing, talking, living their normal Tuesday lives, and I felt like I was underwater. Like everything around me was muffled and slow, and I was the only one who couldn't breathe. That night, I lay in my dorm bed and stared at the ceiling until 2 in the morning. My roommate Petra was asleep across the room, her white noise machine humming softly. I didn't cry. I wanted to. But the tears wouldn't come. It was like my body had shut that option down. Like it knew that if I started, I wouldn't stop. I kept replaying the conversation. We figured you weren't using it. Your father handled it. You're being selfish. Every sentence was a door slamming. Every word was a lock clicking into place. And somewhere in the dark, between 2 and 3 in the morning, something shifted inside me. Not a decision exactly. More like a recognition. A quiet, heavy understanding that settled into my bones. They were never going to see me. Not the way I needed to be seen. Not the way a daughter deserves to be seen. I had spent 18 years trying to be good enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, and none of it mattered. I was just the one they took from, the one who would figure it out. So I decided I would, but not the way they expected. I pulled the covers up to my chin, closed my eyes, and for the first time in my life, I stopped hoping they would change. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. I didn't have a plan. But I had something I hadn't had before. Clarity. And that was enough to start. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes even though I hadn't cried. My body had done something overnight. Processed the shock, maybe. And left me looking like I'd been sobbing for hours. Petra glanced at me from her desk and said, "You okay?" I told her I was fine. She didn't push. I liked that about her. I went to my first class, biology lab, and sat through the entire 2 hours without absorbing a single word. My hands moved, my pen wrote things down, but my brain was somewhere else entirely. It was back in that driveway on Alder Lane, looking at the empty space where my silver Civic used to be. After class, I walked to the Student Union building, found a quiet corner near the vending machines, and started making calls. The first was to my dad. I wanted to hear it from him. I wanted to understand how a man, my father, could forge his daughter's name on a title and sell her car without telling her. He picked up on the second ring. "Your mother told me you called?" he said. No hello. No warmth. Just that dry, tired tone, like I was a task on his to-do list. "Dad, you forged my signature." "Jess, it's a car. It was sitting there doing nothing. It's my car. I paid for it." "You live under our roof when you're home? You eat our food? You think everything is just yours because you handed someone a check?" That one stung, because it revealed something I had always suspected but never heard out loud. In his mind, nothing I had was truly mine. Everything existed within their domain. My money, my property, my effort. All of it was just an extension of their household, their authority, their right. "I want the $3,800 back," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could manage. "That money's gone. Tate needed it. Tate always needs it. Watch your tone." "Or what? You'll sell something else of mine?" He hung up. I sat there for a long time after that call. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from something deeper. The realization that I had no ally in that house, not one. My mother dismissed me. My father dismissed me. And Tate. I hadn't even tried calling Tate, because I already knew what he'd say. Something vague, something avoidant, something like, "I didn't ask them to do it, Jess." As if that absolved him of spending the money. Over the next 2 weeks, I tried 3 more times to resolve it. I sent my mom a long, carefully written text laying out the facts. The car was mine. The title was in my name. The sale was illegal. And I wanted either the car returned or the money repaid. She responded with one line: "You need to let this go and stop creating drama." I emailed my dad a scanned copy of my original bill of sale and the title registration I'd kept in my files. He never responded. I even texted Tate directly. I said, "You know that car was mine. You know what they did was wrong. Can we talk about this?" He read the message. He didn't reply. 3 days later, he posted a photo on Instagram of himself at a bar with friends, smiling, arm around some girl, captionless. Life was good for Tate. Life was always good for Tate. I stopped eating well. Not on purpose. I just forgot. I'd go through an entire day on campus running on a granola bar and water, and only realize at 9 p.m. that I hadn't had a real meal. My grades started slipping. Not dramatically, but enough that I noticed. I missed a quiz in my chemistry class. I turned in a paper late for the first time in my life. Petra noticed. One evening, she sat on the edge of my bed and said, "Jess, you haven't left this room in 2 days except for class. What happened?" I told her. All of it. The car, the forged signature, the phone calls, the silence. She listened without interrupting, and when I was done, she said something I didn't expect. "Have you talked to anyone at Student Legal Services?" I blinked. "Student what?" "Legal Services. It's free for enrolled students. They have actual lawyers. My friend used them last year for a landlord dispute." I hadn't thought about it. Honestly, the idea of involving lawyers, of making this a legal matter, felt enormous. It felt like crossing a line I couldn't come back from. These were my parents. This was my family. Even after everything, there was still a part of me that kept whispering, maybe they'll come around, maybe they'll realize what they did. But they hadn't come around. They hadn't apologized. They hadn't offered a single dollar. They had sold my car and expected me to absorb the loss like I always absorbed everything, quietly, without complaint, without consequence. So the following Monday, I walked into the Student Legal Services office on the second floor of the Memorial Union building. The waiting room was small. 4 plastic chairs, a water cooler, a bulletin board covered in flyers about tenant rights and financial aid scams. I signed in on a clipboard and waited 40 minutes. The lawyer who saw me was a woman named Dana Pryor. She was in her 50s, short gray hair, reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She had a calm, no-nonsense energy that made me feel steadier just sitting across from her. I laid everything out. The purchase, the title, the registration, the sale, the forged signature, the phone calls, the refusal to pay me back. She listened. She looked at my documents. And then she said, "Jessamine, what your father did is a felony in the state of Washington. Forging a signature on a vehicle title to complete a sale is fraud. It's also theft by conversion, depending on how the prosecutor wants to frame it." I stared at her. I had known it was wrong. I had felt it was illegal. But hearing the word felony in a quiet office on a Monday afternoon made it real in a way nothing else had. "What do I want to do?" I repeated her question back to myself. She nodded. "You don't have to decide right now, but you have options. And the longer you wait, the harder it gets to recover the asset or the money." I thanked her. I took her card. I walked out of that office into pale March sunlight, and I stood on the steps of the building for a long time, holding that business card between my fingers like it was a match I wasn't sure I wanted to strike. But something had changed. I wasn't sitting on a bench in the dark anymore, replaying their words in my head. I wasn't waiting for them to come around. I had documentation, I had legal standing, and I had a choice. If you've ever been in a moment like that, where you realize the people who were supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from, then you know what it feels like. It doesn't feel powerful. It feels like grief. But it's the kind of grief that has a direction, and I was ready to move. I didn't file anything right away. Dana Pryor had told me I had options, but she also told me to be strategic. "Collect everything," she said during our second meeting, a week after the first. "Every text, every call log, every document. Build the file before you make a move. Once you start this, you don't want gaps." So that's what I did. For the next 3 months, I became the most organized person I'd ever been. I created a folder on my laptop, password protected, and filled it with everything. The original bill of sale, the title registration, screenshots of every text message between me and my mom, me and my dad, me and Tate. Call logs showing the dates and times I tried to reach them. The Instagram post Tate made 3 days after ignoring my message. A written timeline of every event, dated and detailed, from the day I bought the car to the day I found out it was gone. Dana reviewed it all. She said it was solid. She also said something that stuck with me. "You're not doing this out of spite, Jessamine. You're doing this because someone took something from you and refused to make it right. That's not revenge. That's accountability." I held on to that word. Accountability. Like a rope in deep water. Meanwhile, my life at school started to stabilize. Not because the pain went away, but because I stopped letting it run the show. I went back to eating properly. I set alarms to remind myself to go to meals. I started studying at the library again instead of lying in bed scrolling through my phone, waiting for an apology that was never going to come. And then, in April, something happened that changed the trajectory of everything. I had been volunteering at a local animal rescue called Second Chance Paws since the fall semester. It was a small operation, a converted barn on a property about 15 minutes from campus, run by a woman named Gail Epping. Gail was 61, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, and had the kind of voice that could calm a terrified dog or shut down a rude adoption applicant with equal precision. She'd been running the rescue for almost 20 years, mostly on donations and stubbornness. I'd started volunteering there because I loved animals, and because it gave me something to do on weekends that wasn't sitting in my dorm thinking about my family. I cleaned kennels, helped with feeding, walked dogs, and occasionally assisted Gail with intake evaluations for new rescues. She never asked me about my personal life, and I never offered. We talked about the animals, the weather, the leaky roof over Kennel 4. But one Saturday afternoon in mid-April, while we were giving flea baths to a litter of puppies someone had abandoned in a cardboard box behind a gas station, Gail looked at me and said, "You've got something heavy sitting on you, kid." I didn't answer right away. I just kept rinsing the puppy in my hands, a wriggly brown thing with big ears and a pink belly. "You don't have to tell me," she said, "but I've been watching you for months. You show up every weekend. You work harder than anyone here, and you never once complain. But your eyes are tired. And tired eyes on a 20-year-old usually mean family trouble." I told her. Not everything. Not the legal stuff. Not Dana. Not the file I was building. But the basics. The car. The forged signature. The refusal to pay me back. The silence. Gail didn't say, "I'm sorry." She didn't say, "That's terrible." She turned off the hose, dried her hands on her jeans, and said, "You know what the difference is between a rescue dog and a stray? A rescue knows someone's coming back for it. A stray learns to survive on its own. You've been a stray your whole life, Jessamine. But that doesn't mean you have to stay one." I didn't cry, but I came close. From that day on, Gail became something I'd never really had. A mentor. Not in a formal, structured way. She didn't sit me down for life lessons or give me inspirational speeches. She just included me. She asked my opinion on things. She let me help with the rescue's bookkeeping when she found out I was good with numbers. She introduced me to the local vet, Dr. Anand Mehta, who ran the clinic that partnered with the rescue for spay and neuter services. Dr. Mehta was calm, methodical, and quietly funny. He wore the same navy blue scrubs every day and had a habit of humming old Bollywood songs while he worked. When Gail told him I was a pre-vet student, he offered me a part-time position as a veterinary assistant at his clinic. $12 an hour, 3 shifts a week, hands-on experience, with animals. I took it immediately. It wasn't just the money, although the money mattered. It was the fact that someone saw potential in me. Someone looked at me and thought, "She's worth investing in." That hadn't happened before. Not from a teacher, not from a coach, and certainly not from my parents. I worked at Dr. Mehta's clinic through the rest of spring semester and into the summer. I learned how to prep surgical trays, take radiographs, monitor anesthesia, and handle post-op recovery for everything from dental cleanings to emergency fracture repairs. I was good at it, not because I was naturally talented, but because I paid attention. I listened. I showed up. The same qualities my parents had dismissed as being too quiet were exactly what made me effective in a clinical setting. By the time fall semester of my sophomore year started, I had saved almost $3,000 from the clinic job. I had a 3.6 GPA. I had a letter of recommendation from Dr. Mehta and another from Gail. And I had a legal file that was now 47 pages long. Dana and I had continued meeting once a month. She helped me draft a formal demand letter, sent via certified mail to my parents' address on Alder Lane, requesting the return of $3,800 within 30 days, or I would pursue legal action for fraud, forgery, and theft by conversion. The letter went out on a Wednesday in late September. I tracked the delivery confirmation online. It arrived on a Friday. My mom called me that Saturday morning. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. She texted, "Jessamine, what is this letter? Are you seriously threatening to sue your own family? Call me back right now." I didn't call back. I had spent a year calling, texting, asking, pleading. I was done talking in circles. The letter said everything that needed to be said. My dad called that evening. I let that go to voicemail too. His message was short. "This is ridiculous. You're embarrassing yourself. No lawyer is going to take a case over a used car." He was wrong about that. But he'd find out soon enough. Tell me, what would you have done at this point? Would you have sent that letter? Or would you have let it go to keep the peace? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. 2 weeks passed. No response to the demand letter, no payment, no negotiation, nothing. Just silence. The same silence they'd always given me when I asked for something that mattered. Dana said, "Okay, we move forward." And that's exactly what we did. The process moved slower than I expected. Dana had warned me about that. "Legal systems don't work on emotional timelines," she said. "They work on paperwork and patience." So I waited. I signed what needed signing, I provided what needed providing, and I kept living my life. Classes, clinic shifts, weekends at the rescue, while the machinery turned quietly in the background. The formal complaint was filed with the county prosecutor's office in Ridgemont in mid-October. Dana helped me prepare the supporting packet. The title, the bill of sale, the registration, the text messages, the call logs, the demand letter and its delivery confirmation, and a written statement from me detailing the full timeline. She also included a note about the forged signature, which she said was the strongest element of the case. "The sale itself is problematic," she explained, "but the forgery is what elevates it. That's a documented, provable criminal act. A signature on a title that isn't yours. That's not a gray area." I didn't hear anything for 6 weeks. November came and went. I spent Thanksgiving alone in my dorm, eating takeout pad thai and watching a nature documentary about wolves. Petra had gone home to Portland. The campus was almost empty. I sat on my bed with the container of noodles balanced on my knee and thought about my family sitting around the table on Alder Lane. Turkey, mashed potatoes, Tate, cracking jokes, my mom laughing, my dad carving the meat. And I wondered if anyone mentioned my name. I doubted it. Then, on a Monday in early December, Dana called me. "The prosecutor's office has reviewed your case," she said. "They've determined there's sufficient evidence to pursue an investigation. They're sending officers to your parents' home to serve notice and conduct an initial interview." I sat down on the edge of my bed. My hands were steady, but my heartbeat wasn't. "When?" I asked. "Likely this week." I didn't feel triumph. I want to be honest about that. I didn't feel satisfaction or vindication or any of the things you might expect. I felt heavy, like I was standing at the edge of something irreversible, looking down, knowing I had to jump but wishing the ground wasn't so far away. "Are you okay with this?" Dana asked. "I started it," I said. "I need to finish it." It happened on a Thursday, December 12th. I know because my mom called me 17 times that evening. 17. I watched my phone light up on my desk while I was reviewing notes for my final in animal nutrition. Each call felt like a pulse, urgent, panicked, furious. I didn't answer any of them. She left 3 voicemails. The first was controlled, tight. "Jessamine, 2 police officers just came to our house. They handed your father a notice about the car. You need to call me right now and explain what you've done." The second was angrier. This is absolutely unacceptable. You are tearing this family apart over a car. A car, Jessamine. Do you understand what this could do to your father's record? To his job? The third was different. Quieter. Almost fragile. Jess, please call me. We need to talk about this. This has gone too far. I listened to all 3 messages sitting on my bed in the dark. Petra was at the library. The room was silent except for the hum of the heater and my mom's voice playing through the speaker. Each message a different shade of the same thing. Not remorse, not apology, but damage control. She wasn't sorry they sold my car. She was sorry there were consequences. That distinction mattered. It mattered more than anything. My dad didn't call. Not once. I found out later, weeks later, that he'd gone completely silent after the officers left. My mom told Tate, who eventually told a cousin, who eventually told me, that my dad sat in his recliner for 2 hours after the police visit and didn't say a word, just stared at the wall. I don't know what was going through his mind. Maybe shock. Maybe calculation. Maybe the slow, dawning understanding that his quiet, invisible daughter had done something he never anticipated. She'd held him accountable. Tate, predictably, called the next day. Not to apologize, not to offer to pay me back, but to lecture me. Jess, what are you doing? You filed a police report against Dad? Over a stupid car? It wasn't a stupid car, Tate. It was my car. I bought it with money I earned. Dad forged my name and sold it to pay for your truck. I didn't ask him to do that. But you took the money. Silence. You spent $3,800 that came from selling something that belonged to me, and you never once reached out to ask if I was okay with it. You never offered to pay me back. You didn't even reply to my text. I didn't know what to say. You could have said, "I'm sorry." That would have been a start. He didn't say it then either. Instead, he said, "Mom's really upset, Jess. She thinks you're trying to destroy the family." The family was already destroyed, Tate. I just stopped pretending it wasn't. He hung up. And I sat there in the silence that followed, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I cried. Not because I regretted what I'd done, not because I felt guilty, but because I had just heard my brother, the person I grew up next to, the person I shared a hallway with for 18 years, call what happened to me stupid. Dismiss my loss, my work, my savings, my autonomy, as something insignificant, something not worth the trouble. And I realized that the loneliness I felt wasn't new. It had always been there. I'd just been too busy trying to earn their love to notice it. The investigation moved into the new year. January was cold, gray, and quiet. I focused on school. I worked at the clinic. I walked dogs at the rescue on Saturday mornings, my breath fogging in the air, the ground frozen under my boots. Gail didn't ask about the case. She just handed me a leash, pointed toward the trail, and said, "Take Biscuit. He's been restless all morning." Biscuit was a 3-legged beagle mix with a crooked ear and an inexplicable love for puddles. Walking him through the frost-covered fields behind the rescue, watching him hop through the grass with that uneven, joyful gait, was the closest thing to peace I had. I didn't know what was coming next. I didn't know how the investigation would play out, what my parents would do, or whether any of this would end the way I hoped. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was no longer the girl who sat on the back porch, eating a hot dog alone, watching everyone else's life happen. I was the one making things happen now. And the next thing that happened, the thing that cracked the whole story wide open, came from a direction I never expected. In late January, I received an email from the prosecutor's office. It was formal, brief, and asked me to call a Detective Lena Caldwell at the Ridgemont County Sheriff's Department regarding case number 2024-CF 01187. I stared at the email for 10 minutes before I called. Detective Caldwell had a low, steady voice, the kind that made you feel like nothing you said would shock her. She told me that during their investigation into the sale of my car, they had uncovered something I hadn't anticipated. Miss Thorpe, when we interviewed the buyer of your vehicle, a man named Russell Denny, he provided us with a copy of the title he received at the time of sale. The signature on that title doesn't just fail to match your handwriting, it matches your father's handwriting exactly. We've confirmed this through comparison with other documents your father signed during the interview process. I already knew he forged it, but hearing it confirmed by a detective, backed by handwriting analysis, made it concrete in a way my own knowledge never could. There's something else, she continued. During our interview with your father, he initially denied selling the vehicle. He told us the car had been given to your brother as a gift, and that Tate had sold it himself. When we presented the title with his handwriting, he changed his story. He then claimed you had given verbal permission for the sale over the phone. I didn't. We know. Your phone records show no calls between you and your father in the 2 weeks surrounding the date of sale, and your mother's statement contradicts his. She confirmed that the decision was made without contacting you, though she characterized it as a family decision made in your best interest. In my best interest. Selling my car and giving the money to my brother was in my best interest. I pressed my fingertips against my forehead and breathed slowly through my nose. What happens now? I asked. The prosecutor is reviewing the case for formal charges. Given the forgery, the false statements during investigation, and the documented refusal to return the funds, there's a strong basis for moving forward. I wanted to keep you informed. I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat at my desk for a long time, staring at the wall above my laptop, processing what I'd just learned. My father lied to the police, not once, but twice. First, he denied selling the car entirely, a flat-out fabrication. Then, when confronted with evidence, he pivoted and claimed I'd given permission. Another lie. And my mother, in her own statement, had contradicted him without even realizing it. Their stories didn't align because they'd never expected to be questioned. They'd never imagined that selling their daughter's car would lead to a detective sitting in their living room, comparing handwriting samples and pulling phone records. They had underestimated me. They had always underestimated me. In February, formal charges were filed against my father. Glenn Michael Thorpe was charged with forgery in the second degree and theft by conversion. Both were felonies under Washington state law. He was required to appear in court for arraignment in early March. My mother's reaction was immediate and predictable. She launched a campaign, not of remorse, but of reputation management. She called my aunt, my uncle, my grandmother, 2 of my cousins, and at least 3 of her friends from church. The story she told, according to my cousin Britta, who quietly relayed everything to me, was that I had gone off to college, turned ungrateful, and was now trying to ruin my father's life over a misunderstanding about an old car. She never mentioned the forgery. She never mentioned the forged signature, the lies to police, the $3,800 that was never returned. She edited the story down to its most flattering version: loving parents, ungrateful daughter, family torn apart by one child's selfishness. It worked on some of them. My Uncle Ray left me a voicemail saying, "Jess, I don't know what's going on, but your mom's in pieces. Whatever this is, you should really think about whether it's worth destroying your family." My grandmother sent me a handwritten letter, 3 pages front and back, about forgiveness, duty, and the importance of honoring your parents. She quoted scripture. She told me she'd be praying for me. She didn't ask for my side of the story. Not once. That letter sat on my desk for 2 days before I recycled it. But not everyone bought it. Britta didn't. She called me on a Tuesday night and said, "Jess, your mom is telling everyone you're doing this for attention. But I read between the lines. Your dad forged your name, didn't he?" "Yes." "And they never paid you back?" "No." "Then you're doing the right thing. I don't care what anyone else says." Britta was the only family member who said that. One person out of the entire Thorpe family. One. Type karma in the comments if you believe the truth always finds its way to the surface. Because what happened next proved exactly that. In the weeks leading up to my father's arraignment, my mother made one final attempt to shut the whole thing down. She drove to Eugene, unannounced. She showed up at my dorm on a Sunday afternoon in early March, standing in the hallway in her church coat, holding her purse with both hands, looking smaller than I remembered. Petra let her in. She didn't know the full story. And I came back from a clinic shift to find my mother sitting on the edge of my bed, looking around my tiny room like she was cataloging every detail. "Jess," she said, "we need to end this." I put my bag down. I didn't sit. "Your father's arraignment is in 10 days. If you drop the complaint, the charges go away. We can move past this." "Move past this how?" "As a family, we forgive each other. We start over." "Forgive each other? What exactly did I do that needs forgiving?" She blinked. Just for a second, something flickered behind her eyes. Not guilt, not recognition, but surprise. Like she hadn't expected the question. "You've put your father through hell, Jessamine." "He put himself through hell. He forged my signature. He lied to the police. Those were his choices. He was trying to help Tate. By stealing from me." "It wasn't stealing." "A court disagrees." She stood up. Her jaw was tight. Her hands were shaking. Not from sadness, I realized, but from anger. She was angry at me. Even now, even standing in my room, even with her husband facing felony charges, she was angry at me for not folding. "If you go through with this," she said, her voice low, "you will never be welcome in our home again. Do you understand that?" I looked at her. I looked at this woman who had spent my entire childhood making me feel like an inconvenience, who had sold my car without a phone call, who had called me selfish for wanting my own money back, who had told the entire family I was ungrateful, and I said the truest thing I'd ever said to her. "I was never welcome, Mom. I was just there." She left without another word. She walked out of my dorm room, down the hallway, and out of the building. I watched her from my window, crossing the parking lot in her church coat, getting into her car, and driving away. I stood at that window for a long time after she was gone. The sky was pale gray, the trees bare, the campus quiet in that Sunday afternoon way. And I felt something I hadn't expected. Not anger, not sadness, not victory. Relief. My father's arraignment happened on a Tuesday in mid-March. I wasn't there. Dana advised me not to attend, said it would be emotional and unnecessary, and that my presence might complicate things. So I went to class instead. I sat through a lecture on veterinary pharmacology, took notes in blue ink, and tried not to think about my father standing in a courtroom 60 miles north, hearing the charges read out loud. He pled not guilty. His attorney, a public defender, because my parents couldn't afford a private lawyer, entered the plea and requested a continuance. The judge granted it. The next hearing was set for May. In the meantime, something shifted in the family dynamic that I hadn't predicted. Tate called me, not to argue, not to lecture, but to talk. His voice sounded different, smaller, like the air had gone out of him. "Jess, I need to tell you something." I waited. "When Mom and Dad sold your car, I knew about it beforehand. Mom called me the week before and asked if I wanted them to sell it to cover my truck payment. I said yes. I didn't think about it. I just said yes." I closed my eyes. I've been telling myself I didn't do anything wrong because I didn't physically sell the car, but I gave them the reason to do it. And I took the money. And I never said anything to you. That's not nothing. It wasn't nothing. It was the first honest thing anyone in my family had said to me in over a year. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because Dad's blaming Mom. Mom's blaming Dad. And neither of them has said the truth once. I don't want to be like that. I didn't forgive him. Not in that conversation, but I heard him. And hearing him mattered more than I expected. It wasn't an apology that erased anything. It was a crack in the wall. A tiny fracture in the family structure that had kept me locked outside for 23 years. Thank you for telling me, I said. I'm going to pay you back, Jess. I don't have it all right now, but I'm going to. Okay. That was it. No dramatic reconciliation. No tears. No hugs. Just two people on the phone, being honest for what might have been the first time. The legal process played out over the following months. In May, my father's case went to a pre-trial hearing. The evidence was clear. The forged signature, the mismatched phone records, the contradictory statements he'd made to detectives. My mother's own testimony that confirmed I wasn't consulted. His attorney advised him to take a plea deal. He pled guilty to 1 count of forgery in the second degree, reduced from the original charges as part of the agreement. The theft by conversion charge was dropped in exchange for full restitution. The judge sentenced him to 18 months of probation, 200 hours of community service, and ordered him to pay me $3,800, the full amount from the sale, within 90 days. He also now had a felony on his record. That part wasn't something I celebrated. It was just a fact. A consequence that he built with his own hands, one forged signature at a time. My mother never contacted me after that Sunday in my dorm room. True to her word, she cut me off completely. No calls, no texts, no emails. She removed me from the family's phone plan, which I'd been paying my share of anyway. She unfollowed me on every platform. She told relatives I had chosen strangers over family. The narrative she maintained was airtight, at least on her end. Ungrateful daughter, vindictive child, a family destroyed by one person's selfishness. But the people who mattered saw through it. Britta stayed in touch. She sent me updates, checked in on me, and never once asked me to apologize. Dr. Mehta gave me more hours at the clinic when he noticed I seemed stretched thin. Gail let me take on a coordinator role at the rescue, managing weekend volunteer schedules and helping with adoption events. These people didn't replace my family, but they showed me what it felt like to be valued, not for what I could give, but for who I was. And the money came. Not from my father. He missed the first deadline. But Tate, true to his word, started sending me payments. 200 here, 350 there. Always with a short message. Part 4 of, or, getting closer. By August, he'd paid back $1,500. By October, $2,700. By December, almost exactly 2 years after I first learned my car had been sold, the full $3,800 had been returned. Half from Tate, half garnished from my father's wages under the court order. I deposited the last payment on a Friday afternoon. I walked out of the credit union into pale winter sunlight and stood on the sidewalk, holding the deposit receipt between my fingers. $3,800. The same number that had started everything. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like the closing of a very long, very heavy door. I'm 23 now. I'm in my final year of the veterinary technology program at Oregon State. I work 4 shifts a week at Dr. Mehta's clinic. I still volunteer at Second Chance Paws on weekends. Gail says I have a gift for the anxious dogs, the ones that cower in the back of the kennel and won't make eye contact. You know what it's like to be overlooked, she said once, matter-of-factly, while we were setting up for an adoption fair. That's why they trust you. I don't have a relationship with my mother. I don't expect to. She has never acknowledged what happened. Not the car, not the forgery, not the years of favoritism that made it all possible. She lives in the same house on Alder Lane, in the same beige siding and neat lawn, telling the same story to the same people. I hope she finds peace in that. I'm not holding my breath. My father and I don't speak. His probation is still active. I don't know what his daily life looks like, and I've stopped wondering. I spent too many years imagining what was going on inside his head, trying to decode his silence, looking for love in the things he didn't say. I don't do that anymore. Tate and I talk occasionally, not often, maybe once a month. Short calls, mostly practical. He's working at a tire shop in Tacoma. He sold the truck. He's driving a used sedan now. Something modest. Something paid off. He doesn't say much about our parents. I don't ask. But there's a quiet honesty between us that didn't exist before. It's fragile. It's small. But it's real. And that's more than I ever had with the rest of them. I bought a new car last month. A 2018 Subaru Outback, dark green, with a roof rack and 62,000 miles. I paid for it in full. No loan, no cosigner, no help from anyone. I drove it off the lot on a Saturday afternoon, pulled into the parking lot of the rescue, and sat there for a minute with the engine running, my hands on the wheel, looking through the windshield at the bare trees and the gray sky, and the line of kennels where the dogs were barking. And I thought about that silver Civic, the one I saved for, the one I loved, the one they took from me. It's gone. I'm not. If you've made it this far, thank you. I mean that. This story wasn't easy to tell, and it won't be easy to carry. But I told it because I know there are people out there who grew up the way I did, invisible, overlooked, taken from, and who are still wondering if they're allowed to stand up for themselves. You are. It won't feel good at first. It'll feel like grief. But it's the kind of grief that has a direction, and if you follow it far enough, it leads somewhere better than where you started. If this story meant something to you, hit that subscribe button. Not for me, for the next story that might find you at the right time. Leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, and if you've ever had to walk away from the people who should have held you close. I see you. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you in the next one. It's gone. I'm not.